Hello and welcome to my presentation. In my presentation we will be considering the question of how the advent of free game engines has democratised video game development. First of all, let's discuss what a game engine is. One of the absolute fundamentals of video game development is the need for and use of a game engine. The game engine is the basic computer programming that underpins the game, and upon which everything else is built. A game engine is what powers and controls all actions and events that a player gets to see and interact with. Without a game engine, no video game would be possible. Now that we know what a game engine is, what do we actually mean by democratisation? The Oxford English Dictionary has two definitions listed for the word. The second definition is the one we are particularly interested in. Democratisation, noun. The action of making something accessible to everyone. I think that's a pretty clear definition of what the word means. So, now that we know what a game engine is and we understand the definition of the word democratisation, we can look at the opening question again and see that we are asking, how has the advent of free game engines opened up the creative process of game development for potentially everyone and anyone to get involved in? So let's look into it and see what we find. Traditionally, in the earlier days of the games industry, most developers or development teams would create their own game engines from scratch, cobbling together bits of relevant code that would work best for whatever game type they were working towards. This would often prove laborious, time-consuming and costly, and would obviously require a strong knowledge of programming, thus putting game making out of the reach of many want-to-be game makers. The more complicated the game engine required, more programmers would be needed, and obviously more programmers would mean more cost. The time and cost associated with engine development meant that only wealthy or successful indie developers could afford to make games. This, however, would all change when a number of companies decided to sell their game engines as a service to other developers, and thus the middleware market was born. To start with, middleware game engines such as Renderware, Blender, or the early id Tech were still a pricey option, but far cheaper than developing your own engine. As time progressed and the number of game engine providers increased, so the cost of buying or using an engine reduced drastically, eventually resulting in competing engines even being offered for free. Free game engines are not necessarily something new. Engines such as Ogre 3D, Erlicht, Adventure Game Studio and Blender have been open source and available since around 2000 or even earlier. However, many of the open source engines were not easy to use and still required strong programming knowledge. Many of them were just graphics frameworks and still needed additional coding. However, in the last 4 or 5 years, free game engines have now become the norm. It is now standard practice for most game engines to offer a free version alongside a paid version that offers more features or support. The idea behind this being that by giving the engine initially for free, a much larger number of users try out the engine, hopefully get hooked or see the value proposition and then commit to purchasing a full paid license. Many engine providers have taken this further and have now adopted a tiered licensing system where developers get the engine for free up until the point at which games made with the software start to earn more than a set amount of revenue, at which point they then have to pay a royalty or buy a license. These kind of pricing structures benefit indie game developers in a huge way, helping to reduce the upfront cost and risk of making games. As such, indie developers can now delay any associated engine costs until after their games become financially successful. Let's hear David Elgerson, co-founder of Unity, explain this better.
As a technologist and somebody who used to be programming Unity, I always wanted Unity to be free. It was always my kind of personal stated goal that I wanted everyone to be able to have it. We had sort of a cheap version of Unity back in the old days. And then at some point in 2009 we said like, okay, let's just make it, free. But it was the cheap version that we made free. So it was kind of the, some people said it was the shitty version. Maybe it was. Well, it was feature limited, right? I mean, you didn't get everything. It was still great for making games. It was great for learning. A lot of actually, good games started like that and then maybe upgraded to the pro version later. But then come this spring, we had been able to build a company that was able to give the software out for free. And that meant that, we had other ways of paying for the development, which is critical because nobody wants to use a technology, or nobody should use a technology that isn't able to pay the bills, because it's such a long-term commitment from the developer's side, right? I mean, if the engine somehow fails you and goes away, that sucks. Yeah. So we had gotten to a point where there's a lot of big companies that are paying the bills. There's a lot of people that are buying assets in our asset marketplace called the Asset Store, which is awesome. And also, a year and a half ago, we acquired Finnish company Amplifier that is now Unity Ads. That also helps developers make money. We take a cut of that and put it back into the engine, right? So this March, we went and we made the Pro version free, meaning that everything that was in Pro is now in Personal Edition.
I think that was quite an interesting clip, and it's well worth watching the full interview for more insights into Unity and how the company helped democratise the games industry. It is not just cost where free game engines can provide value to indie developers. Most engines, along with their framework, come with a variety of tools and editors that have been designed to help streamline the process of using and building games with the various engines. Many of these tools have been designed and fine-tuned to help developers quickly and efficiently craft game levels that can easily be prototyped, tested and iterated upon. By using a modern free game engine, small indie teams are now capable of producing similar amounts of work that would have previously taken much larger teams to produce. Another area where developers gain huge benefits from using a third-party engine is when it comes to multi-platform development. Many free engines support publishing or exporting a working game file to a wide range of target platforms. Unity, for example, currently advertises that it supports 27 different platforms on its website. In many cases, the engine providers have done most of the complicated and hard work associated with converting a game made for one platform to another. This process used to take full teams or even separate companies considerable time and resources to achieve. With many of the free engines, it can now often be as simple as selecting and tweaking a number of export options and sitting back as the tool builds a new version of the game that works on the new desired platform. This makes it possible for smaller teams or even one-man outfits to quickly port and publish games across a wide range of platforms, thus giving them the best chance of success. So, in conclusion, there is no denying that the availability of free game engines has changed the landscape for indie developers and opened up game development for all. By providing solid frameworks to build upon and giving powerful, easy-to-use tools along with customer support and large, helpful online communities, modern free game engines have definitely democratised video game development. I'd like to close with a few words from indie developer and Vlambeer co-founder Rami Ismail, who I think sums it up very well. Thank you.
The interesting thing that's happening now is that it is possible for anybody to go make a game. You don't need to be skilled in any particular thing. You just need to sit down behind your computer, have this idea that you want to make a game, make the one step that is download a program that will allow you to make a game, and then sit down and fail miserably. Like, that's the first step you need to take, and that's the first step that any kid is going to take. Is they're going to sit down and they're going to go, I don't understand any of this. This is way too complex. I don't even understand what I need to do. And then some people go and get frustrated and give up, and some people go and see a challenge, see something that they can get better at, and just start chipping away at making their first video game. And that first video game will be awful because it's your first video game. It's not going to be a masterpiece. It's going to be a far shot from what you want to make. But it's a really different. It's a really different reality from what it was 20 years ago.